Welcome to Unraveling Midlife. I'm your host, Sarah Spence. This show is inspired by the midlife crisis, astrology transits according to Western astrology. These transits are phases that everyone goes through in life, specifically starting in the mid to late 30s through to the early to mid 40s. A little later, there's a time of significance around the age of 50. It's those years that are often called the midlife crisis, which I call the midlife unraveling, thanks to Brené Brown's article of the same name. It can be the opportunity to confront our biggest fears, find our way through the foggy times, bounce us from one extreme to the other, and give us health checks, just to name a few. In my quest for as peaceful a journey as possible, through the sometimes chaotic nature of the human condition, I'm exploring my own midlife by speaking with others about their experiences and the tools they've used to walk through this time with grace and awareness. At the end of the episode, I've included a piece of my original music that links to the show's theme. Today's guest is an energy intuitive, shaman, and author of the book Talk to Me, Alyse Young. Her specialty is facilitating the language of emotions and feelings through working with the inner child and higher self. I first met Alyse several years ago at some of Aotearoa New Zealand's conscious festivals, where we were both workshop facilitators and where I played on the music stage both solo and with my band Shakti. Subsequently, I attended one of her inner child workshops as well as the several shamanic journeys she offers. What resonated with me was the depth of the work and life-changing tools that helped me identify and feel through emotions and feelings. This was at a time when I was in the initial stages of the astrological transits that make up this midlife unraveling, right in the midst of my Pluto square. It felt like I was being forced into strange feelings that I tried to explain to myself with reasoning. With tools including those I learned from Alyse, I began to fully realize, and not just intellectually know, that feelings can never be explained or managed by the mind. They require embodied feeling. I got curious. How did these midlife transits influence the people who have helped me at this interesting phase of life? Alyse describes her rude awakening, which led to a complete change in her mainstream life and a move to Australia, especially impactful in her Chinese family as a first-generation New Zealander. Later on, during her Neptune and Uranus transits, where there is often initially fog, then another wake-up and shake-up, she left her mainstream life to live in a different country in a remote valley for 5 years, communing with nature and experiencing an illuminating expansion of consciousness. These days, in a beautiful coastal spot that certainly doesn't feel like part of a big city, she offers a myriad of modalities through workshops and one-on-one sessions, both in person and online. Alyse's focus is to support millennials, the eldest of who are in their first phase of the midlife unraveling, to facilitate self-awareness, acceptance, empowerment, and self-healing. As she says, it's our conditioning that impedes our potential, and it's the midlife unraveling of this conditioning that we're here to talk about. Alyse, welcome to Unraveling Midlife.
Thank you, Sarah. It's really it's a beautiful opportunity to be here to share whatever you want me to share.
So how would you describe for listeners what you do?
I'm an energy intuitive, and what that means is that I interpret energy back to feelings, understanding the dynamics of energy and the consciousness of the energy of what is actually in front of us. So whether it's myself or with another person or with a group or an actual problem. So yeah, I kind of just look at the energetic patterns of the conditioning and the beliefs that always come back to a feeling. And instead of buying into the story, I help myself and other people to understand how to move through by expressing it with a new perspective?
I was thinking about feelings, even though I was, probably trying to feel the feelings, but I do a lot of thinking, a lot of air in my chart. It arose within me at the time that I did some work with you, and we did focus on feelings. And I remember for myself that I'm not always great at identifying feelings or knowing what is happening. It just feels uncomfortable. And often I know I find my form of escapism, and more I'm noticing that. Is that the kind of thing that you work with?
Yeah, definitely. It's helping people to feel comfortable with their feelings, because, the feelings is our energy. And the discomfort is actually understanding that you want to express something differently, but you're not quite sure how to. And this comes back to the conditioning and your beliefs of where you are at the moment.
I know that you also do a lot of inner child work.
So the inner child work is really symbolic of being able to identify the aspect of the energy that is blocked. And then when we bring it back to just a feeling and we see it as our small child, as we were at a time when something occurred, we can sort of relate and understand, wow, okay, I remember that. I remember that I couldn't speak. I remember that I wasn't allowed, and so therefore we start skewing our idea of how to express our feelings. And so what we're doing is, with the inner child, we're taking it back to the purity of the innocence of that place, of the lack of expression and the lack of support that we felt. And and hopefully by self-talking, but being in connection with the feeling, we then allow and give permission for that expression to be released with a new perspective, of course.
What was coming to me this morning was, when I was thinking about talking with you, was when I was at primary school and there was the mean boy, and he would always tease me, and my mum said, just pretend it doesn't affect you. And I've always been one of those really sensitive people. And then I saw him at a festival from a distance a year or two ago, and I thought, oh, I think that's that guy. And he'd been quite mean at high school too. And I thought, I'm not going to talk to him. And I missed this great opportunity to have some closure, which only occurred to me this morning when I was pondering it. But that sensitivity and that learning how to survive with life, these really important skills to get us through being human. And I feel like a lot of us, and I know for me, and is it quite common that you find a coping mechanism and maybe take it a little too far?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel like probably 97% of the population is in survival mode, because we've been conditioned to close down our feelings and to adhere to a code. It's like a code of behavior. That's what we're learning through our family, our culture, our society, rather than just the pure acceptance of, this is my expression. And so, education, for one, is a code of what do you call it? Socializing. And, in that way, it's just easier to keep people in control, I suppose. Our families control us by giving us conditions. And so therefore, our being from the time we're born feels quite suppressed and repressed on many, many levels. And this is why we're seeing such a huge sense of disillusionment and, lack of fulfillment, all those sorts of feelings that come with your adult life. It's like a lot of people are now at the point, this is a crossroad right now in our humanity. A lot of people are now starting to question, is this the life that I actually signed up for? Is this the only life that I have to live right now? Can it get better, and how will it get better? Because I feel like crap inside. what am I striving for? You know, I'm on this wheel, this treadmill going round and round, and all I see and sense of, you know, more and more things coming onto me rather than being free.
It's funny you should say that, because that would be maybe part of the reason that I wanted to create this show. Was, okay, well, I feel like I'm in patterns and in recurring circumstances, and I want it to get better. So there's a little bit of striving and a little bit of learning from studying astrology that some of this is cycles that happen to us all. Like the influence of the moon is obvious. I know that I saw in the news after the last full moon that emergency departments had been really full and GPs had to step in to help because the emergency department couldn't cope. And I thought, that was full moon.
That's
Not
right.
Surprised. And so when it comes to the greater play of life, there's all these other influences with the planets, which is these midlife astrological transits. And there's that sense of things that we need to face, like biggest fears, or hang on, are we on the right track? So how has that worked for you in your life?
Well, I had a very rude awakening in my early 30s, and I came from a very conservative, very quite traditional family life. I was on the straight and narrow. I was the good girl. You know, I did what I was told, and I was happily married, and, you know, and just striving for that normal life, whatever that means. But also I was very aware that I felt incredibly depressed, probably from my teenage years up until that point of 31, where I could no longer contain it, you know. And so in a way, it was my rude awakening, and I never spoke to anyone about it. I just held it all in. And so, yeah, and it was through my ultra sensitivity that led me to a therapist, actually. And she could see that I was completely shut down. Like I was a completely rational person, you know. It was either black or white. There was no in between. And so then she could see that I was probably going to be a difficult client. So only seeing her, 2 times, she suggested I go and visit a psychic lady, which I thought was really amusing. And I thought, yeah, she can't help me. You know, that was my narcissistic side. Oh, nobody can help me. And I went to this lady, and she was just so amazing, because she described my whole life. So all she asked me was my name, my birth date, the members of my family, and then she told me my whole life. And that was an hour and 20, I think, I spent with her. And I just thought, wow. First of all, I felt completely relieved that actually somebody understood me. And I was fascinated. And one of the very first things she had said to me was that you've got great consciousness. And me and my conservativeness, she was this English woman with long curly hair. She was very thin and willowy, and, you know, she had a crooked nose, and she had a squeaky voice, and she wore this long dress and boots. And the only thing I could think of the whole time she was with me was that you're a witch. Not realizing she's psychic, of course, you know, and she can hear my thoughts. But and so then when she said I have great consciousness, I was sort of like, I don't even know what that means. And so she encouraged me to go and learn more from her, you know. And originally I was really resistant, but from that first meeting with her, I felt like there was a rope in my stomach and I was just being pulled. So, you know, I made another appointment, and when 2 weeks later, I think it was, and she said to me, she said, oh, I didn't expect to see you again. And I said, yeah, I don't really know why I'm here. And I said, but I somehow felt comforted by what you shared with me. And so from then on, I actually entered her school, which I spent 4 years learning about how to interpret energy, understanding my feelings, because that's really where it came from, the shut down feelings, working with the inner child, and lots more actually. And through that, my shamanic side came through. So all those things that you talked about in the beginning, I do refer to the astrology because I do understand that the energetic pull from the different planets, the way they're positioned, because we are from the stars, we are from the stars. And so therefore we are going to be influenced through our waters, which is why everyone has this moody time with the moon, because the moon is all about the water, the emotions. And so I'm always aware of looking at the astrology to understand what I'm moving through, because it's usually a collective thing as well. And so therefore it doesn't become so personal. And, and with all the learnings I've had over the years, I also understand that we are connected to everything that is living, and every form in every dimension as well. And the way to access that is actually through our sensitivity and our feelings. We're given sensitivities for a reason. It is part of our communication.
Yes, sometimes it feels like a curse, but really it's a blessing in so many ways.
Yeah. Yeah, it's about looking at it from a different perspective now and using it as your ally.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So all that rude awakening happened for you and obviously had a huge impact. What I'm curious, as I unravel my own midlife, how did that happen for you when you got to those kind of classic Western astrology midlife transits? So, 35 to 38 was when your Pluto was squaring off to the birth chart, and then Neptune in 39 to 42, kind of overlapping with Uranus at that 40 to 42. What happened around there for you?
Well, it was a huge disruption to life as I knew it. I went through this unraveling of my former life. And so it was understanding all those repressions that was created out of my family life, my culture, my environment, all of that. It was actually a time of reclaiming my inner child to understand me as a person. And then from 35 onwards, because then I left the school, and then it was this sense of like, what am I doing with myself? Where is my life? And at that point was probably actually one of the lowest points in my life. I hit rock bottom simply because my whole world had changed so dramatically that my friends, my family didn't recognize who I was and didn't want to accept who I was becoming. And that's when I got a strong guidance from Spirit to say, you need to live in Australia now. And that was huge. It was like I'd traveled previously, 4.5 years traveling around the world, having a great time, in my youthful expansion, so to speak. And then like I was ready to come back to New Zealand, settle down, have a family per se, and all of that just was like thrown out the window. And so then it was like, you can go and live in Australia now, either Gold Coast, Queensland, or Melbourne. And it just completely frightened me, because it was like, even though I have some family over there, I didn't want to live in Queensland. It's way too hot for me. I didn't know anyone in Melbourne. So then I went to WA. I did WA for 8 months. Oh my God. And it was just a reprieve. It was just sort of getting myself used to the idea of I need to live overseas. And I had a girlfriend over there, and it was really interesting because I was working for the WA Health Board, I think it was called, doing PA work, and and at some point, and I was also receiving Ayurvedic massages from this wonderful person, and after about 8 sessions, she sort of said to me, she said, Alyse, she goes, what are you doing here? This is so not you. And in that moment, it was like, oh my God, thank you, I can leave now. And so then that's when I actually made my way to Melbourne. And it was really interesting, because on the bus from the airport into Melbourne, I thought, my God, what was my resistance? It kind of feels like Auckland here, And so from that point, I also, I found a job working for the ANZ in the ventures department as a PA again. and just getting my roots down. And I was sort of looking for things to continue my learning and growth in the spiritual, emotional realms. And the more I looked, the more I realized actually I understood a lot more than what was being on offer at the time. And then I actually went to Peru with Wayne Dyer, with a group of 40 other people. It was massive. And during that time, that's when I had another awakening where Jesus appeared in front of me. He was so big, I just thought everyone could see him. It was as clear as day to me. And anyway, and I didn't really think much of it because I'm not a religious person. And the message was, there was a lot of messages on that journey, actually, and a lot of them were pointing to, you are a healer, you need to start teaching this, blah, blah, blah. There were so many little incidences where people were coming to me, wanting to talk to me. And at some point I would say, well, I'm going to make you cry, right? And so then I handed in my resignation. And then my boss was like, oh, no. He said, you need to stay on. I really want you to be my full-time PA. And I said, well, no, I said, I've got other things I need to do. And he says, well, what are you doing like this? And I go, well, I'm going to start practicing healing work, because I wasn't doing it in New Zealand. But when I came to Australia, I realized. And he goes, healing work. And he asked me about it. And I said, yeah, I work with energy. And he goes, how's the energy in the office? And I go, oh, it's probably just over 50%. And he goes, only 50%. He goes, how can we make it better? And I was really fortunate because he was really open to it. So the next 3 months that I was still there, he allowed me, well, he was really interested in combining the energy work with the office and everyone in it. And, and I've got some amazing stories, to share about that. But in the end, I started my own practice. And it was just through word of mouth. And I was really fortunate that I was guided to 2 pivotal people who kept recommending me. But it was really funny because the first time I would go in and I introduced myself, gave them my brochure, and then they would say, oh, this sounds really interesting. I'm going to come and see you to test you. They both said that to me. It was really funny. And from there, I just continued. I ran my workshops. I did one-on-one. I was guided to connect with Vienna Stibble, who teaches working in the DNA, theta healing. And so she came out to Australia, went to the Gold Coast. I went there and I totally understood everything she was talking about. I came back and, incorporated that into my work. But at the same time, like, everything is shifting, changing. And as much as I really wanted people to take on the teachings, I was really aware that they weren't ready. They weren't ready to make that commitment. And so Melbourne was a very lonely time for me. I sort of felt like I was always talking to myself, simply because I was coming from a different perspective of how life needed to be. And everyone would give you all the excuses of why they couldn't make the shift. And so I was there for 9 years, and the last 3 years of it was incredibly painful. I went through a lot of deep traumatic healing. When I turned 40, I went to Hawaii as a present to myself, and I was guided to go to Hawaii, and I ended up going to Maui. And that was a really magical experience. But at the same time, it was a lot of deep healing as well. And I remember when I came back to Melbourne, I started to understand that the healing was now shifting to a collective consciousness. And so once I understood that, I started to also make connections with a lot of souls from overseas. And it just felt like to me that, I actually needed to go out into the world again. And they were asking me to go to the US. And then I had huge resistance because A, I wasn't that fond of the US culture. B, because I didn't know how I was going to survive or to be able to stay and work there, so to speak. And also because I just didn't know anybody there. So there were huge fears. So for 3 years in my resistance, I had created frozen shoulder.
Ouch.
And it was so painful that I could no longer do yoga, could no longer do Tai Chi. I could only lift my arm this high. I couldn't bend it backwards or anything. And then it just came to the realization is that, you know, if I don't agree to my destiny, I'm actually going to become more sick. Yeah, after a long time of preparing myself to surrender to what my soul wanted, the frozen shoulder disappeared in 3 days. Just
3
disappeared.
days.
Yes, just 3 days.
Oh my goodness. Only being able to raise your arm so that it was in line with your shoulder, that would have been awful for getting dressed.
Yes.
To 3 days.
Yeah.
Wow.
It became completely free. And I also knew that it was my resistance to being in my soul flow that was creating the dis-ease in my body. And like I said, it took me 3 years to get comfortable with the idea of actually just leaping into the world alone, not knowing how, why, where. And then, and thank you to Spirit, 2 weeks before I'm about to fly out, it gives me the clarity that I'm actually going to Kauai. So then everything became an adventure after that, because in my mind, I kept thinking I was going to the US, to the United States, even though Hawaii is part of the United States. It's not really, okay? And so it just made everything. So as soon as I said yes, everything just flowed. Everything just flowed. I was able to sell my car, sold all my possessions. I started to just connect with people who would help me along the way. All the doors just opened really easily. So then I spent the next 5 years living in Kauai. And of course, how does one do that? With blind faith, actually. But it was such a magical experience. And it's like when I lived in Melbourne, I really tried to live under, what I call under the radar, and that is to live very simply. And I was living off the seat of my pants all the time, but also applying the understanding and the wisdom of what it means to be a multidimensional being. And I remember before that 3 years, I had lamented to Spirit and said, I would do this work for free if I never had to think about paying bills or, that financial bind that we get into, that slavery that we buy into, okay? And for me, that was my biggest hurdle, I guess, because, you're living right in society, and so therefore you have to kind of adhere to it. But I would sort of live just beneath it. And it wasn't that I suffered in any way, but I was very aware that this is what everyone's suffering is, because you're applying your life to a system that doesn't necessarily agree with your soul purpose. And so I was really trying to live from that space of my soul and and I had a really good life in Melbourne. And so once I got to Kauai, it almost felt like Spirit said, well, here you go, do it, just live it now. And so then I was guided to go into a valley to live just in nature. And in that space of just being in nature, I saw how the magic of our own being and the connection with co-creation of nature allowed things to just manifest. And this is kind of what I share now. This is what I share in my workshops. And but I have to say, at every point where I'm having to make a decision to live a little bit differently, it's quite jarring. It is jarring to my system, and it takes me a little while. Like when I got the message, you're going to go live in the valley, go walk in with nothing. It was like, it took me a day and a half. I had a little breakdown for a day and a half. And then in the end, I just sort of thought, you know what, if this is my destiny, I'm just going to say yes, because my soul has never taken me in a wrong turn. And in fact, my soul leads me into really magical experiences, really magical adventures. So what am I afraid of? I'm afraid of the constructs in my mind. That's all I'm afraid of. And so when you get to that point where you understand that and you're able to move forward, then you start a whole amazing chapter in your life.
I think that a lot of people will be nodding along, as I have been, as you've articulated so clearly, that when obstacles and challenges and those jarring experiences come up, we can emerge stronger, and that trusting in the inner promptings of guidance of what to do and really, truly trusting are the key to human life, really.
Yeah, because the suffering is a mind thing. It's a practice. It's a conditioning. Okay, and as soon as you understand the part of you that is pushing against, and you give yourself a bit of space to be able to lean back and to allow the what ifs, and to give yourself a new perspective of the what ifs, then your soul and your spirit will completely support you. The universe completely supports you in the move forward. What's stopping you from moving forward is your ego state, is the need to feel that security. But what is security? Security means I'm now bound by the job, I'm now bound by my financial situation, I'm now bound by my family, I'm now bound by my society. But you didn't come here to have that experience. You came here to have a soul experience, a soul expression. And this is the part of our education that is lacking, because this is the part that makes you light up. This is the part of you that carries your essence.
So what would you say to people that are listening that feel really bound? For example, people with children that do need to take care of them in situations that may feel constricting and not in the flow. What would you say to them?
Well, first of all, I say, if you're this unhappy on an inner level, you have to have an awareness that you're actually passing this on to your children. And this is a very real question. I remember a man coming into the valley and talking to me about he had a beautiful gift, and he said, I'm going to wait till my children are old enough, and then, once they leave home, then I'm going to embrace what I really love to do. And I said, okay, but do you not understand what you are actually teaching your children? You're saying to your children, you can only be passionate about how you really want to live when you become a teenager, or, when you become this adult. I mean, for many adults, they are now in the process of unraveling everything they've learned to get back to their soul purpose, to get back to their pure essence. And this is what I would like everyone to question, is to understand, at this moment in time, are you living this life for you? Are you living it in a happy, fulfilled way that contributes to society, to humanity? Because if you're not, you are just adding more fuel to that disillusionment. This is why we have such a chaotic state in the world right now. Because, we are born of creator energy. That's the first thing too, is to ask yourself, do you believe that you are of creator energy? If we're made in the image of God, do you believe that you possess that creator energy? For me, yes, I do. And for everyone else, they need to explore that with themselves, because you weren't born here to be enslaved by others. But that's what our society teaches us.
I know that you have a great grounding practice. Do you have any suggestions for something quick? Let's say someone's listening, driving in their car, or sitting at home listening to this show. Is there something that you can share that might help?
Well, the first thing is to really start tuning into your body, to your sensations, to your sensitivities. As feelings are arising, to allow them to arise and just to acknowledge them. Right now, I'm just feeling really sad, and it's okay. That's just how I feel right now. And that's enough. That's enough, because when you acknowledge your true feelings, you are now meeting your point of empowerment. even though you might feel sad, you are now acknowledging this is part of my energy expression. And so now you're embracing that energy rather than projecting the energy.
I know a couple of songs and the lyrics that really spoke to me. One was Mihirangi. It's okay to feel how I'm feeling. And you talking reminds me of seeing her at the Parihaka Festival some years ago singing this beautiful, it's okay to feel how I'm feeling. It was so touching because often we can learn that it's not okay to feel how we're feeling, right from, you know, being socially acceptable maybe at a young age or as, gosh, teenage years. Oh.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. We've learned to, you know, it's like this is understanding how to accept and receive one another. And the person just wants to feel okay that they have these feelings, like a small child. They just want to know that they're still loved and that they're still okay, even when they're this angry, because they're just expressing their passion. Even when they're this sad, they're just expressing a loss that, you know, is momentarily, you know. For children, they don't hold on to feelings. When they're very, very young, they're very spontaneous and very instant with their feelings. Once it's expressed, it's done.
I had some epic tantrums.
Yeah. And you see, we've grown out of that. And that's kind of where we need to get back to.
I know I'm doing some work where sometimes I'm feeling like I'm going into tantrum land, and it's scary, but it's so liberating.
Yeah, totally liberating, because your tantrum will just get louder if you don't allow it. Well, you will actually, when you push your energy out, you're now creating a drama so that the tantrum will come through. But because your energy is sitting outside of yourself, you're not actually receiving the activation and the healing that you need in order to propel you into that next level of consciousness.
So for the activation and the healing, I mean, there's many different things that I know for me, I can be attracted to at different times. And I know that your work's really helpful. What kind of work do you do now with people? You're online, you're in person. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Yeah, so I do private sessions, one-on-one. I do online sessions for people who are overseas. I run workshops. So to me, it's really a conversation. We're just having a conversation, and I'm just connecting to your energy and then helping you to actually find an appropriate expression for yourself, so that you're actually acknowledging your soul, your inner child, your feeling state, which is your energy, okay, your energy state. Yeah, so basically that's all I'm really doing.
Wow.
But it works on a very deep level.
And that's a classic New Zealand way of saying, oh, that's all I'm doing. I just do that. Whereas it's so powerful. I remember coming out of a workshop going, wow, I've got this tool to identify how I'm feeling. And it's okay if maybe I can't, but I can identify that it's uncomfortable, and so grounding and so useful.
Yeah, so my soul journey workshop and healing the inner child workshops, I impart tools which are very, very instant and accessible. And it's really learning to read your own sensitivity, what it means for you. So that's really what I'm sharing with people. This is what this impulse or this sensitivity or this feeling means to you, you know. And so when they can feel it in their body, they're reconnecting to their whole being now. It's not a mind thing. Like, you know, I constantly have to remind people, this is not a thinking process. You know, what you're doing is you're sensing right now. And you know what's so funny? So just very quickly, like in the last Soul Journey workshop I ran, I got them to connect to their soul and their higher self, because they have slightly different tones in the way they communicate, all right? And the messages were so clear, so clean and clear, you know, like one guy goes, oh yeah, just saying that I am you and you are me, and that, you know, we are here, just be with me. And he goes, but I'm not sure if I just kind of made that up, or, you know, did I just think that? And you know, and then I realized, I thought, wow, isn't that interesting? We are so conditioned to not believe in our own senses. And I said, well, which part of the body did you hear this? Did you hear it up here, or did you hear it in here? You know, and he didn't really know. So I said, okay, so take a breath and just breathe. Now ask the question. This is a message from my soul. Yes or no? It'll be a simple yes or no. You'll feel it in the body. So where are you feeling it? And he says, I feel it here.
Oh, in the heart. Oh.
I mean, it is that simple, but we've forgotten how to really listen to our own being.
It feels like society and the speed of life and thoughts have taken over everything.
In our early years, the domination has been to be academic, to be intellectual, to theorize, and I see so many individuals afraid to go into the experience of just living because they're trying to figure out what's the safest way.
Funny thing, when I ask myself a question to feel the answer yes or no, I doubt it. I've often doubted it. So I use muscle testing or standing and whether I go forwards or backwards, so that I've got a clear indication of what I'm being told.
I know, it's hilarious, isn't it? We don't even know how to read our inner compass.
Well, we're getting there. It's the unraveling. For me, I know it's that midlife area where I'm like, okay, how can I do my soul's journey? How can I really live what I'm here to live? Rather than filling out a template and ticking boxes from the society that not necessarily my parents drummed into me, but that I just picked up from everywhere.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So going forward also is to understand that a thought is a thought. So what I say to people is that when you're in tune with the body will communicate through the feelings, through the sensitivities. And sometimes it can be like a thought or it can be a word, And the thing is that when you're connected, when you're grounded and connected, it's what we call you're in the stream. So you're connected to your source. But once you go into thinking, you're thinking about it, you're actually now moved away from the stream. So now your thoughts are very limited. But when you're in the stream, everything is a possibility. So there's a thought.
All these possibilities.
Yeah.
All these possibilities. Thank you so much, Alyse. How can people contact you?
I have a website, www.youngalyse.com.
YOUNGALYSE.com.
I have a Facebook page as well, just under my name, Alyse Young. Or email me on youngalyse, YOUNGALYSE 555@gmail.com.
So what's the symbolism of the 5?
Freedom.
Change.
Change, growth, expansion, freedom. That's my life path.
Hallelujah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time and asking me to come on to share my perspective. It is only my perspective, but I encourage you all to start dropping into your body, listening to the body, listening to your feelings, and just acknowledging them, because that is your empowerment.
Today's musical piece comes from my first album, Saturn Return. I was 28 when I released it, the age that Saturn was approaching, the spot it was when I was born. Now that I'm much more savvy about things astrology, if I could go back in time, I would rename the album to Neptunian Dreaming, as the collection of songs perfectly mirrors the time when Neptune, the spiritual dreamer, passed over several planets in my birth chart. Right now, I'm passing through the Neptune Square Transit, one of the Midlife Unraveling series. So these lyrics are a timely reminder, with the album's leading song, Listen.
Life is so often duality, concepts raw listen to these words I sing inside. Inside. But there's nothing but everything, and so I listen to the inner strength, the voice within. I listen to these words I sing, and I listen, learn and pray, and I listen deep and listen true inside. Inside.
Unraveling Midlife is brought to you from Aotearoa, New Zealand by www.sarahmarlowspence.com. Theme music is by Sarah Marlowe Spence and Sarasvati Marie Willis, and art by Samantha Hepburn.